Welcome to our discussion on the ninth edition of MLA Handbook, continuation from chapter number 5. The subchapter, we are going to discuss the subchapter 5.15. See, when not to supply information, cross reference, or use the published form of a name. This is what we are going to discuss in this chapter. So here, when we are not supposed to supply an information, as a kind of information or cross reference while creating the works cited list. Here, if you are writing about a work, writing a work directly with an author whose name changed, in that case, a person who has already or changed the name, so that you don't have to add, do not use that former name in references anywhere. Example, in the case of trans authors, they might have already gone for a, a very drastic change in their name, maybe from man to a woman name to man's name. So this is again, we don't have to add the former name, even if we have information available, even if we know that yeah, their former name was this. So under the name they use, list the work under the name they use, regardless of the name that appears in the source. Even if that reference is there in the source about their former name, that changed name, you don't have to add it. So this is all with when we don't have to supply information. This is such cases may be there, and we have to make it according to the logic. So what they are at present, how we can identify them at present, at least when the work gets published. We know the year of publication and what the writer is at present, how they are and what they are, the present name that they use. In that case, we can make use of our logic to stay away from supplying information that is no longer valid. That is it. No longer it's in use. So we don't have to add it, even if we are aware of that information, even if we have that information available at hand. Now to subchapter 5.16. Next subchapter, online handles. Online. Sometimes we don't usually have access every time to some printed material. Now we have to think about again. Now we have more access, and we usually use a lot of online resources as our secondary material. Even primary sources sometimes we use, or most often, sometimes at least we have to use uh, the online materials. But here, in this case, it's about online handlers, directly something accessed from different sites, and how to deal with that author element. We're specifically mentioning certain elements. And here it's about author element, how to deal with this. It's the main thing we have to keep in mind. So this is about core elements. Actually, this fifth chapter is about the core elements, or the works of the list of works cited. From there, we have different core elements, and author is one of the core elements. And here we are discussing multiple ways, or how many ways we have to deal with, how many methods we have, how many ideas we have to keep in mind, because every time the author element doesn't look the same. So that's the next idea we have to keep in mind. When author's online handle differs from the author's account name. Look at this part. Sometimes at least we come across this. Sometimes it's a tweet. It's not always about the kind of names that we get on a printed resource. So author's account name may be there, online handle may be there, and how we can choose. And again, we can see the difference. It's not the same. Megnan Fogarty and Grammar Girl. So it's an online handle is at this one. It's easily identifiable. Account name is this. And how we can choose which one shall we add there. It's actually helpful to supply the handle in square bracket. Handle doesn't look like a name, or it's a kind of funny combination of some words. So that's not at all the name of a person. We can easily identify that. So here it is told that to supply that handle in square brackets will be making things more clear. So if you have a reference about this kind of a site, or a sentence or a particular quote you make from there, it brings more clarity if you have, if you can add that information to make it more clear, accessible. Here, when the handle account and the name are are the same or similar, like here you can see another example, Angie Thomas, and here online handle also looks the same. And in that case, if you want, you can omit the handle if you include the URL in your entry. URL is the kind of this path that leads you back to that easily well. So that opens up to that site directly, so that you don't have to add that, and it's clear that it's Angie Thomas. Angie Thomas. So if you do not include the URL, for instance, if you access the post from a mobile device, or you follow the option presented, actually it will come how to deal with these URLs. In that case, please retain the handle, since it's useful to find that source easily well. Basically, it's about the logic, but again, we have to keep in mind where to add and where not to. Sometimes it's needed, necessary, and how to deal with URL we will discuss in the coming session regarding chapter number 5. In the same chapter, some sub chapters are there specifically discussing URLs and how to add and deal with that. Okay, so now we have to move to the sub chapter 5.17. It's 17th subchapter in this section. Here, organizations, groups, and government authors. It's a very important part. Organizations, groups, and government authors. And again, first subdivision is listing by a name. Most often, some government authors or organizations may have some articles with them. See, you have to omit that articles. That's the first important instructions we have to keep in mind here. A and the. See, we should omit if it is in the works cited list entry. We have to omit. It's incorrect to add the Beatles. How to make it Beatles. And here the revolver. You have to omit it. And it's correct to note down it as Beatles revolver. That's a correct way. Organizations, groups, and government authors. Sometimes the name of an organization, that's what it is. It's not the name of name of the work. It's there in italics. So it's easily noted down, or it's identifiable that it's a name of some organization, group, or a government author. Now, correct, it's about removing that or omitting that articles from both part, and making it alphabetize the name of an organization by the first word and do not reverse that name. We can easily identify the name part of it. And we can never reverse the name as well. See, for example, United Nations. You can never do it like William Shakespeare getting reversed as Shakespeare, William. Here it's about United Nations as United Nations itself. This is not the name of a person, but that of an organization or agency or something. Okay, so this is the way correct and incorrect methods are to be kept in mind, because we come across different kinds of names. Sometimes United Nations, it's a familiar agency. We know that name. So how does it look like when you reverse it, and how it looks like when you do not reverse it? We know that awkwardness if you reverse it, so that it's easily noted that it's incorrect. But if you come across a different name, an unfamiliar organizational name, if you don't have this idea in mind, we are likely to be confused and to go incorrect in our work cited list creating part. So this is why we have to keep all this in mind with every minute detail. So this is what you mean by following methodology properly well. Next subchapter 5.19. Subchapter 5.19, that's 19th subchapter, discusses avoiding redundancy. Redundancy is repetition, and that brings again awkwardness, nothing but awkwardness. Here is this is the special case when a non-government organization is both author and publisher. You don't have another author element, you can, and see, anyway it's necessary that we have to add the publisher's details so that you can skip the author element, and it's allowed that you can skip the author element to avoid redundancy, so that you can begin the entry with the work site title, the title of the work, and then you can add the name here, like Modern Language Association of America 2009 report to the Tegel Foundation on the undergraduate major in language and literature. That's the title title of the work. It's in italics, so that it's easily identifiable that that is the name of the title, and the publication is by Modern Language Association of America. Imagine about adding it as the author element and then putting a full stop, then adding this detail of the name of the text, then again adding this part. It will make it very long a citation, and it will bring nothing but awkwardness and confusion. So this is easily acceptable that this redundancy, avoiding redundancy, is very important and urgent. But here, list the organization only as publisher. Actually, list the organization only as publisher. For an exception, when citing government publications, we will discuss that in chapter number 5.22. So 5.22. 22nd subchapter, we will have to discuss this exceptional case. Okay, here this example is clear. Now, when the author of the work is a division or a committee of the organization, that's it. Subdivision. Sometimes we come across some subdivisions. We cannot avoid adding that as well. So, American Library Association is the publication, but we can identify from that source that there's a subdivision that is the major publisher that takes the task of publishing the work. In that case, we have to add both. In the form in the here, both the element, both this author element as well as the publisher element, those remain the same. But here there's a difference. You can see the name, different names here, and we cannot avoid adding both in that case. Now to subchapter number 20, government authors. So, government publications emanate from many sources and so present special problems in citation. Sometimes we come across some confusions while citing such publications. If you are working with many government sources, for example, you may choose to standardize the names of government entities so that entries can be consolidated. Standardizing the names of the government entities, if you have many government sources, sometimes these can be special cases as well. Most of, if you are referring only the traditional publications with some uh, individual authors or more than one or two author sources, that's fine, but sometimes at least we have to know these possibilities as well. We cannot always say that no, I will refer only text with an individual author or some two or three authors. Sometimes we have a source that makes us uh, unable to stay away from using the points in it. So we cannot say that, oh, it's an author element or say government publication, and I'm not really comfortable or I'm not really aware of citing it. So that let me stay away from using it. So this is good that we know how to deal with any kind of writings, any kind of publications, how to deal with that, how to create the works cited list entry, and things become more clear and smooth. So here, the non-specialists sometimes, but non-specialists and writers working with a very few government sources can usually treat them just like any other source written by an organization. See here, presented and again record the name as presented by the source. Whatever is given in the source. Sometimes, if you have that much confusion, we can add that as it is given in the text. That is government publications, and standardizing the name is about actually about the logic, about the logic. US Department of Labor. Here, as it is given, it is presented. So, government authors, it's unlike you are reversing the name of an individual author. That's not needed, but give the details as given or as available in the text as such. Now, chapter number, subchapter 5.21, standardizing and supplying information. Standardizing is a term it's, we have to note down. If the author of the document is not specified or unclear, or if you are writing in a specialist context, cite as the author the government agency that issued the document. Sometimes we have to identify this. Is it supplemented or issued by? Is it issued by a government agency? So you can see here, United States Congress House improving broadband access for veterans Act of 2016. So this is about identifying the government agency and listing it as such. So here there is a mention about largest to the smallest. Here United Nations is the highest entity in this, and there you can see some subdivisions. We cannot avoid that as well, and only here we come across the name of the text, main resource, and you have an URL added with that. Okay, so that's the way. If you have more elements and you have to supply information in the order from largest to the smallest, you can add all the details. Okay, if that's an act and all, it's really important and it's really recommended that you add the whole. Okay, now to consolidate it and consolidating entries. Consolidating entries. If you are citing two or more works by the same government or government entity, you have the option to consolidate the works by standardizing the government name and listing them under the government author, even when the author and publisher are the same. So government name, you are listing, you are starting from that list that method. That's again then under the government author, even when the author and publisher are the same. So it's a reverse case. So you want to consolidate. You have more works in that way, so that you are adding that itself as the author element. The in the first part we saw a case where you are omitting this part and you are adding it as the publisher, but starting with the name of the text. Here we are doing it in a different way because you have more works by the same government or government entity. So that organizing the works by the author instead of title is particularly useful in specialized studies or long form of long form works like books and dissertations. Begin the entry with the government followed by a comma and the name of the agency. Name of the government and the name of the agency. So that's from where, which agent, which government. This agency is part of which government. It's easily identifiable, and then start with that. Australia Institute of Health and Welfare. So which agency of which government? And then California Department of Industrial Relations, not of Australia but of California. Congress House, not of California but of United States. So then you add the government first, then consolidate the entry. Between them, name any organizational units of which the agency is part. For example, the House of Representatives is a part of Congress. Okay, House of Representatives is a part of Congress. So that if you have that detail, you can add that as well. And then from the same authors, a repetition to avoid repetition as usually we do. What we do usually with that case? See, three hyphens or three M dashes for any name repeated from the author element in the previous entry. United States Congress House. See, that detail is the same. Then the new element is Senate. Up to that, you can use the same method as we use with the repeated details. Then United States Congress House applies for the third entry as well. After that comes the new or more detail like Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. All that details are additional apart from the major detail that can stay as the same for three of these, all these together. So that's the way you can consolidate the entry as such. So that's all with that part, and we will go to our next discussion in the coming session. Thank you so much for listening.